Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa has outlined government's plans to address the record-high youth unemployment in the country, with the youth jobless rate standing at 45.5%. Ramaphosa announced that the presidential employment stimulus has created 1 million opportunities across the country. The program, which was launched in 2020, is aimed at using public funds to create jobs for young people. To help us understand this program and how it's assisted young people, I'm joined by Phillip, Dr. Phillip, who is the program lead for the presidential employment stimulus. Dr. Phillip, thank you so much for making time for us. So the president took some time this week to give a sobering account of the unemployment crisis. 2 million jobs lost during the COVID-19 pandemic. How has this presidential employment stimulus assisted?
So the presidential employment stimulus was launched as part of economic recovery from COVID, but we had an unemployment crisis before COVID. What it did was exacerbate it. And so it was necessary to look at how, under those circumstances, we could ramp up the efforts to support forms of employment and forms of livelihood support in that context. And it provided an opportunity to go to greater scale than we've been able to go to before, and also to innovate in a range of ways in terms of the type of work, the quality of work outcomes, the quality of work experience that was rolled out through the employment stimulus.
Yeah. So what kind of jobs have been created? When the president speaks about the 1 million opportunities, are these from the expanded public works program?
The employment stimulus builds on a long history of support for public employment through the expanded public works program, but this was very clearly intended to be additional to existing commitments, and also to augment the types of programs and build on lessons from prior programs. So the single biggest program in the stimulus, there have been 15 programs, and clearly there won't be time to go into all of them, but the single biggest program has been the Basic Education Employment Initiative, run through the Department of Basic Education. This program, in fact, 150,000 young people started work as part of a new cohort just last week from the 1st of February in over 22,000 schools. A feature of this program is that it reaches every corner of the country. You know, it's hard to create jobs in every corner of the country. Often jobs are concentrated in the areas of greatest urbanization and opportunity. And so a really unique feature of this program is its spatial footprint, because every community in the country has schools. And so young people are employed as school assistants through this program. This cohort is the third cohort. Over 600,000, just under 600,000 young people have already had work experiences in the schools since October 2020. Mm-hmm. And a feature of the program as well is that it reaches all skills levels. So the teachers' assistants who support teachers in the classroom have to have matric, and graduates have been prioritized. And then there are general assistants who don't have to have a matric, and they work outside the classrooms. They do school maintenance, they support with sanitation, security, after-school activities. And so the full spectrum of skills can be supported through that program.
Yeah.
And we see it as key to addressing one of the critical barriers for young people in this labour market, because we always from the private sector that they're unwilling or unwilling to employ young people without work experience because they lack what are called the soft skills. This program is giving young people exactly those soft skills. They're learning accountability, timekeeping, time management, problem solving. They're communicating with youngsters. They're learning the full range of skills that are needed in the wider economy and in the wider workplace. Mm-hmm. So through this program, government is actually closing that critical gap for young people, the lack of work experience that's acting as a barrier into labour markets. But that is our biggest program, but it's just one of them.
Yeah, it's just one of them. Unemployed graduates, how have they been assisted by the program?
So we have a range of programs that have supported graduates, including the schools one, where they have been prioritized. Graduate unemployment is a lower percentage than for any other cohort. So the programs targeting graduates have been relatively smaller, but significant nevertheless. So all 26 universities in the country have signed up to assist by placing graduates in work that uses the skills that they've learned in the university context. And so they've been placed in all 26 universities. Mm-hmm. The Water Research Commission has also run a really interesting program for just under 1,000 graduates who have been placed in the water sector in public and private facilities, getting the opportunity to apply their skills. We've had graduates in catchment management programs through the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment and their entity SAMBI. A lot of graduates engaged in environmental science have been placed. So across the spectrum, we have had graduates placed in opportunities that allow them to apply their skills.
Mm-hmm. And you are going to obviously need money in order to see these programs through. How are you mobilizing funds? What's been the contribution of the private sector?
So this was an emergency program, if you like, in the context of the pandemic. It has been extended beyond that because our crisis of unemployment has not gone away. Up to this point, the program is almost entirely funded from the fiscus. There's been no significant contribution to it from the private sector. And it is seen as an intervention in a context in which the private sector is really struggling also with the combination of the pandemic and then the energy crisis. You know, the private sector has been struggling to contribute to employment at the scale we would like. Yeah. And in that context, there's a really strong social rationale to provide public funds to support a minimum level of access to employment, because participation in employment is such a critical part of economic and social inclusion. Yeah. I think it's important also to note that these programs, in addition to employing people, are also creating real social value. And if there's time, there's some programs to highlight in that regard as well.
Yes, please. Let's talk about some of those programs, because the aim of this presidential employment stimulus is to utilize those public funds, not just to create jobs, but to support livelihoods as well, right, while the labor market recovers. So apart from those jobs that are being created, those opportunities, how are you also supporting livelihoods?
So over 150,000 production input vouchers have been issued to subsistence farmers because they were also hard hit in the context of lockdown, and food security, food value chains were disrupted. And so as part of the stimulus, there was a mechanism to provide support to get subsistence farmers back into production, to help them through that difficult phase. So that's one example. But another one that we're particularly excited about is called the Social Employment Fund. And it has taken the approach that as government, we can't do this alone. We need to reach out to the significant capacities that exist in communities, in civil society, in organizations that are doing a range of forms of work at the local level to contribute to things like food security, combating gender-based violence, early childhood development, informal settlement upgrading, all of these kinds of initiatives that are happening at grassroots level that often aren't able to access government support. Mm-hmm. So the Social Employment Fund was set up precisely to fill that gap. And the response has been amazing. So right now there are over 50,000 people employed through the Social Employment Fund doing work at community level in exactly those kinds of areas. And we're seeing really interesting impacts because it's providing a mechanism that can support initiative in communities to solve problems at the local level and to support the energy and capacities in civil society to grow and to consolidate and to reach out and reach further than they have been able to do.
Yeah, so far there's been a focus on these 15 programs. Are there plans to expand the work of the presidential employment stimulus?
We would certainly hope so, but right now the program has funding confirmed to March 24. It was initiated as part of a crisis response. Certainly, we would argue that the crisis is not over, but right now, confirmed funding exists to March 24 and not beyond that. So keep an eye on that in the upcoming budget.
And are you seeing a dent, Dr. Phillip? So from the work that you have done through these 15 programs, and you still look at the crisis that still is when it comes to youth unemployment, are you seeing a dent on this crisis from the work you've done over the last, 2 or so years?
We hope so, and certainly the figures do come through in Stats SA data in the periods where there are particularly high levels of participation. And yes, at community level, we most certainly see a difference. And if you speak to participants and beneficiaries, they will certainly attest to the difference, including people like teachers in schools who give credit to the support that young people have provided through the program in that context. So we certainly do think it's making a difference, but as you know, $1 million contribution over 2 years to a crisis that is far greater than that, we would really argue that these kinds of programs do need to be scaled up further.
Yeah, Dr. Kate Phillip, thank you for making time.